Hey, friends. Well, I had kind of an interesting experience today in that I have I have reported extensively on my reading in this book by Edmond Sprunger. It's a book about a niche thing, which is how to help your child learn music, basically. Um, it's a really beautiful kind of manual based on both a really deep and extensive understanding of music pedagogy, in particular violin pedagogy, and a pretty extensive and well-researched body of knowledge around childhood development, psychological development, what Maria Montessori would call the planes of development in a child's sort of growing up process. And so I was blown away by this book, and I came home after reading it. I read it while I was out of town. I came home, started putting some things into practice, and two things happened. One, very quickly, I realized that conceptually understanding how to do a particular thing is fine and is important, but it's really the entire context of practicing at home that needs to be right. That's the thing. There's no trick for getting that right. It really is like, let's take responsibility for the whole big thing and deal with that. It's in other words, it's not enough to just read a book and come back and like try some new things to make it easier. It really is kind of a conceptual reboot for me as the parent that I have to be willing to undergo, and then have the endurance and the sort of in the tenacity to really kind of rebuild how I go about this process. And I think so anyway, all of this is prelude, because today I met with Edmond Sprunger. I met with the author of the book. I had poked around online after reading his book and found out that he does consultations. And I had, in addition to sort of like realizing what I just talked about, that there's kind of a larger reboot necessary, I also realized there's some conversations with Annalise's teacher that I feel like I need to have, and that I don't know how to, or it's not that I don't know what to say or what I'm looking for. It's more that but not being a teacher in the tradition and with the sort of like training that she has, I wanted to make sure that I have a really clear understanding of what it is I'm even asking and what I'm looking for and what I'm trying to articulate. I almost wanted to like have a practice run with Edmund, who's an expert and can kind of reflect back to me. And what I got from this conversation is, first of all, it's really exciting to meet the guy who read this book that I've been talking about for a couple of weeks now. I was really just kind of very excited to meet him and hear from the horse's mouth sort of what some of a reflection on my specific experience. And also, I was at least somewhat affirmed in some of the choices that I've already made, some of the way that I go about this stuff. And B, I was affirmed in some of the questions that I want to ask. He said, you got good questions. He said, you should, when you talk to this teacher, you should, trust that you're asking good questions. You're not going in with an agenda trying to tell them what to do. You're actually asking really, really good questions, and they're the right ones. And he gave me some really great input, great advice for how to go about that process. 2 or 3 different things, just simple suggestions about why don't you try this? And so I felt like I came away from it really, both a little bit settled in terms of this is what I have some clear steps to go forward with. And even maybe more significantly, I think there's a way in which intense moments with our kids can make it seem like the timeline within which something has to happen is incredibly short. Like they sort of like collapse time, and they make it seem like there's an urgent thing that needs to like get right somehow, and it needs to happen right away. And just, it wasn't anything he said. It was just the fact of the conversation and the manner in which our dialogue took place sort of also reminded me, like, oh, yeah. There is time around all of these questions. None of it is insanely urgent. I mean, the thing is, when I talk about that, I'm not even really talking about like music necessarily. I'm talking about the way that we can be with our kids and it can feel like something has to change or something has to happen or something isn't happening or something needs to not happen. And it's kind of like this, I think it's a combination of the incredible level of investment we have in our kids, the amount that we care, this kind of like they might as well be an extension of our own body, so the stakes feel existential, and the proximity of life with them. They're in our house, it's literally our day-to-day experience, so we don't get distance from the situation that might afford us a moment to reflect. A lot of times we're living these moments kind of uninterrupted. And I think really just taking the time to meet an expert and to do a little looking at what an expert really brings. Look at the ideas that they're offering. It's almost like it was a little meditation period. It was a little moment of zooming out, almost like going up to a 30,000 foot view, just by virtue of the fact that I was having the conversation in a way that I think it is harder for me to do on my own. It's just harder for me to do that in my own, to myself. Like now maybe I can do a little of that, having had that experience, but it was a very positive experience. It's very helpful, very, very settling. And I think it did give me some tangible steps, some ways in which I can now sort of go forward and have a couple conversations and really look at, okay, like what are we doing here? What are we, what am I about? What needs to happen for this to sort of dial into a place where it's a little easier? One of the things Edmond Sprunger talks about in his book is kind of like the opening. It's almost like the thesis of the book is making it easier. Literally, it's on the title, it's on the cover. Ideas for making it easier. Easier is the word. You're not, obviously musical learning is about improvement. It's about growth. It's about increasing skill. It's about mastery. But if we get too fixed on that sort of like forward moving progress aspect of things, we can start to move too fast. And I think that's a little bit what has happened to myself and Annalise. I think we're moving a little too fast. And I think slowing down, just recalibrating, taking the time to reset, for me especially, re-envision what this process is about, what it looks like, where it's going, how it's moving, the kind of time that it wants to take, what some of the goals are, how to go about getting some of those, how about accomplishing some of those goals. You know, it's like I can do myself a lot of favors by just settling into that. So I got a little thinking to do, but it felt very helpful. Very helpful. And it was super cool to meet somebody, you know, within a pretty short time of sort of like digesting the ideas. Opening the door to actual contact was really great. So that's what I've got today, folks. That was my big event of the day. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you. Have a great day. I'll see you soon.